This is Dabu7. For the longest time, we've talked about the possibility of martial law and of camps set up in this country. For the longest time, it got scoffed at, called conspiracy, and rejected. We now have these camps being rolled out not only in Canada and other countries, but it's being proposed right here in this country, in the state of New York. These detention centers for those that don't want to get the jab. It's happening. Everything everyone said, oh, it'll never happen. It's not possible. There'll be a revolution before that happens. Well, here we are. No revolution, and it's happening.
Kahala Yahweh Ba'Hasham Yahweh Shai Ba'Hasham Dash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Peace and the Most High's increase to you, Akim, pushing this truth and sincerity indeed on the highways and hedges, doing these sit-downs, risking your lives in these treacherous times. Shalom to you, Akwath, as well, you sisters at home patiently listening and learning. Shalom, Yasharala. This is your brother Dawad Da. I go by the name Dawad. Kind of like how if your name is Robert, you might go by the shortened Bob, or if your name is Annabelle, you might go by Anne. In any event, both are good. For those who don't know, I'm from the city of Toronto, by far the most populous city in Canada. And by the way, the capital of Canada is not Toronto, it is Ottawa. Toronto is the anglicized version of a so-called native Indian word which means plenty. The word Ottawa is derived from the so-called Algonquin Indian word Ottawa, meaning trade, and is in reference to the indigenous peoples who used the river to, of course, trade, hunt, fish, and for ceremonial traditional uses. Algonquin, Cree, Mohawk, Squamish, Micmac, Iroquois, Huron, etc. We know these names to refer to the indigenous peoples of North America who are really the children of the biblical tribe of Gad and of the northern kingdom of Israel and its collective. Really, they, along with the so-called Negroes and Latinos, are the true lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Hebrew Israelites. Toronto is located in what is called the province of Ontario, a name shared with the city east of Los Angeles in the state of California. It is said to either derive from the Huron or Iroquois tongue, meaning great, beautiful water. In the Hebrew, the word province is Medayana, properly meaning a judgeship, a jurisdiction, by implication a district, as ruled by a judge, generally a region. We know this to be an administrative system first popularized by biblical Israel, to be later adapted by Babylon and then Rome, where a modern dictionary claims the word originally derived. Ergo, we are living under a Babylonian-esque, Romanesque system built upon the subjugation and deception of Israelites. Incidentally, Idumea was considered a province as well. This is Proverbs chapter 25 and 2, and it reads, "It is the glory of Yahweh to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter." Meaning it is an honor to discover the thing, that thing being a secret of Yahweh that he has concealed. Amos 3 and 7, "Surely the Lord power Yahweh will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets." Now, what do prophets do? Prophets prophesy, meaning say before, yes, but ergo, what do they reveal? Yahweh's what? Yahweh's judgments. This is the second Psalm, verse 10, and it reads, "Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, ye judges of the earth." The Israelites are the rightful kings and judges of the earth who are next to rule. How do we know that? The scriptures say, "Through thy precepts I get understanding." Now, scholars suggest that this psalm may have been written by Ezra. Others say David. Either way, it is also said this is a psalm. In particular, King David took his time in teaching Solomon. Next precept is 1 Corinthians 6 and 2. We'll start at 1. "Dare any of you, having a matter against another, go to law before the unjust," the unjust is Esau, "and not before the saints." Meaning, if any of you has a dispute with another, simply put, if one of you Israelites has a dispute with another Israelite, do you dare to take it before the unjust, who is Esau, for judgment instead of before the Lord's people? Verse 2, Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? Now, who are the saints? The saints are the Israelites pursuant to several passages in the scriptures, two in the Psalms, but the first coming to mind being Revelation 14 and 12. Really, the saints are the election of Israel, the so called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians in this truth. All tribes will become judges. And if the world shall be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? Know ye not that ye shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? Really, I wanted to start off by giving you a short history of the city to preface this, but that was the spirit doing with me what it wills. In any event, not every lesson has to be robotic as long as it's to the point. For those that don't know, it was Elliott Trudeau, father of Canada's now Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was responsible for Benjamin, Judah, and Levi, and the so-called Italians, who we know through study, the knowledge of the scriptures as well as secular history, a good portion, the Sicilians particularly, by way of the Moors, to be descendants of Israelites. It was Elliott Trudeau who had adopted policies which really ended up being a snare unto Jake. In any event, it was Trudeau Sr. who in the 1970s made it possible for Jake and the Italians to immigrate to Canada, and it is they who ended up being the backbone of which the infrastructure was built, and in turn responsible for the growth and prosperity that made Toronto the force that it is today, in which the other nations that immigrated after are now more than ever reaping the benefits. There's a Little Italy, Chinatown, and truthfully Moab played a part in Toronto's initial growth, but every nation has carved out an identity in the city, yet Benjamin is still trying to establish their own Little Jamaica, Little West Indies, respectively. The long-standing joke is, what is Benjamin complaining about when we already have the projects? This is what they say. As I said, these policies and programs devised and financed by Trudeau ended up being a snare unto Jake. Several scriptures easily come to mind: Psalms 36 and 4, 38 and 12, 64 and 5, Micah 2 and 1, even Deuteronomy 28 and 32. I'll read that. And it reads, Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fall with longing for them all that day. And there shall be no might in thine hand, which initially speaks to watching our people being whipped and children sold during slavery, but you can't tell me metro housing isn't the present day plantation, and stiff drug penalties followed by deportation isn't indicative of Jake being helpless, powerless in the sight of their enemy, left longing to see their kinfolk again. Toronto is really a little New York in the microcosm. The differences, besides the litter and radioactive rats, being the demographics, that's one example. To compare numbers in populace, I believe the ratio is 10 to 1. Of course, the economy and power of the dollar, really the illusion behind the power of the dollar, is another difference. Toronto and Canada on a whole is synonymous with multiculturalism, but it is nowhere as multicultural as New York City. In New York, being 6'3", dark skinned with a Hispanic name is of the norm. I know plenty of brothers named Juan and Miguel who are so-called black. Man, them niggas is blue. That's how dark they are. In Toronto, it is very rare you come across people that are informed enough to understand that Spanish is a language and not a people. Spanish is a political designation and really a social construct. The original Spaniards, and Portuguese for that matter, are Edomites. They subjugated, meaning enslaved Israel. Thus you have the Spanish. Case and point, really an example of that being Cristobal Colon, PKA, publicly known as Christopher Columbus, and his conquistadors who, upon arriving on western shores, went raping and robbing, pillaging, and eventually colonizing the so-called natives who were the northern kingdom of Israel, mixing and mingling with their seed, giving birth to the Spanish regions like Hispaniola, designations like so-called Hispanic and Latino, but ish is a suffix which means like. Spanish, not the Spaniards, but like those Edomites from Spain. Kind of like the Jewish in our land who are like us Israelites simply because they infiltrated and took our oral and written traditions, playing out our nationality, basically hijacking our identity. Another difference is market share and commerce, which in hindsight is a byproduct of the power of the economy, I suppose, but one that I'm qualified to speak on in a conversation I myself ironically had with Justin Trudeau is the market share in music. Canada's market share of music on a global front is like 0.5%, I believe, which is really why the two don't compare. I mean, Drake, Justin Bieber, The Weeknd, and Tory Lanez notwithstanding. Just like you can't compare the Junos to the Grammys or the American Music Award unless you're speaking about symbolism and figures used in idolatry. For those that are not in the know, the Juno Award here is the equivalent to the aforementioned awards. I mean, unless you're speaking about symbolism and figures used in idolatry, but that's everywhere in New Rome and Babylon. I guarantee you, if you've ever won an award in school or anywhere else, it somehow dates back to the worship of a naked Greco-Roman god. Another long-standing joke, this time in the Canadian music industry, is the Juno is a glorified paperweight and does nothing, especially in the urban category, to better or further your career. One standout difference between the states in general and Canada is law enforcement, not in reference to how they carry out procedures. I'm talking about backlash, and maybe in a sense there is, but I'm talking about the backlash and response regarding police brutality from the community in general. Again, I stress in general. Certain places in the U.S., it's not going down like that. But my generation in particular was not going for the whole shooting you in an innocent traffic stop that just went sideways routine. Police in Toronto have been cut, stabbed, shot, squad cars firebombed, even equipped with explosive devices when they tried to shoot first and ask questions later with Jake. A little known fact, the term racial profiling itself is Canadian in origin. The precedent for the term in a court of law was actually set by Justice Donald MacLeod, a Benjamite who at the time was a lawyer, and once upon a time he was my lawyer and mentor. And so needless to say, when it comes to going toe-to-toe in combating the police in Toronto, which is something the men of the Lord never advise or subscribe to physically unless absolutely necessary in guarding of your own temple, historically, Jake in Toronto are not having it. And to be honest, no different than the South Bronx or Brownsville was like when I was living there, or the jungle out in California. You know, Popo had to pick their spots. Which leads me to this video clip you may have already seen, but I'm going to show it to you regardless. It speaks to, despite differences in policy or procedure, regionally, territory-wise, city to city, or even across country lines, standard operations regarding Esau's stance on enforcing distancing, lockdowns, and quarantines when it comes to the Crown Royal Rumble 19, no matter where you live, seems to be universal, and it's on a unified front. And watch this clip.
No, Sheila! Hey! Fuck you! No, Sheila! Fuck you! Hey! Don't put him out!
Il peut plus respirer, arrête! Arrête, il peut plus respirer!
Get the fuck out! Don't fucking do that! Don't you fucking do that!
Okay, calm down.
Stay fucking here!
Can we move? Okay?
Okay, we're calm. Don't do that!
J'ai un bébé.
We're people!
Hey!
Get the fucking side! Get the fucking side!
Non, lâchez-les, s'il vous plaît, là. S'il vous plaît, les gars, là. Hey, lâchez-les, là. Ils sont trois dessus, là.
Well, I'm gonna come out.
Hey, non, ils sont trois dessus, là.
Yeah?
Hey, ils sont trois dessus, là.
Get the fuck out in there! Jesus Christ!
Ça va être pire, arrête.
You fucking make things worse!
No!
Yes! What are you gonna do now? Stay there!
You have a shoes for the video? You have a shoes? You have a shoes?
Hey, c'est ça, Bernard. Come on, guys.
Hey, vous n'avez pas le droit de tirer quelqu'un de la maison.
Je sais pas qu'est-ce qui s'est passé.
Vous n'avez pas le droit.
Avez-vous des
Moi, je veux voir votre sergent.
Avez-vous des chaussures?
Non, j'ai pas de celui.
You have a shoes?
Non, j'en ai pas de celui.
Donne-y ça. Attends, toi, là. Oh my
Vous avez
God.
un mandat? Moi, je vais voir votre mandat, vous venez
Non.
Non.
La chose à faire, c'est juste de collaborer.
Hey, c'est quoi? Vous m'avez tiré en bois. On a sa caméra sur un tabarnak. Vous avez tiré mon fils.
Écoutez, madame, si vous avez un problème, notre sergent il est en route.
ben tant mieux.
OK? Vous n'êtes pas d'accord au travail policier, vous avez des recours, vous les prendrez.
When white people get a nigga wake-up call.
Close the door. I don't want to see those people anymore.
Sacre bleu. Inside joke. All because their neighbor decided 6 people in the residence at one time was too much. A little dust up, nothing too crazy, but I think you get the point. And if it went over your head, the point is this. No matter where you go, Jake, and I'm speaking to you Israelites especially, no matter where you go in the world, be it Brazil, Uzbekistan, Somalia, Vancouver, San Juan, Corpus Christi, the devil is still the devil. Esau is still Esau, and those confinement camps are coming. Let's get this. This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, and it reads, "And he shall speak great words against the Most High," meaning set himself up not as an equal, exalting himself over as a rival to the Most High power, whose name is Yahweh, "and shall wear out the saints of the Most High." And how did Evil E do that? Through a subjugation of our land, our people, our identity, slavery, plantation Christianity, the prison industrial complex, the 3 strikes rule, locking brothers away for 100 years over 2 nickel bags of weed, through police brutality, the promise of a better life and a way out of poverty through sports, entertainment, the music industry, his witchcraft and New Age philosophies, the horrific things he's done to us, anywhere from the Trail of Tears to the Tuskegee experiments to the race riots in Tulsa to how he did the so-called Panamanians during Operation Just Cause, and of course his ensuing detainment camps. And think to change times and laws, changing the calendar, changing the high holy days and days of worship, daylight savings time and leap years, changing laws, endorsing laws that go against the Lord's ordinances, meaning statutes and commandments written of in the Bible, an example of that being same-sex marriage. "And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time," which equates to 350 years from 1620 AD to Abba Bivens first bringing out this truth that is now, starting with the elder apostles on down, being ministered to you. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 15. We'll start at verse 14, and it reads, "Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and the swords in their hands." Obviously speaking to one manner of people being Esau against another being Jacob. We can also go in the direction of those from a fundamental religious standpoint in conflict. And not only can this speak to the war of races on a whole, there is also classism, the rich versus the poor, the haves versus the have-nots, the international bankers who believe they are the only ones fit to rule. The earth is overcrowded, so they have to do something regarding the ever-growing population. But it also speaks to those who follow and believe one ideology and set out to champion it over another. Those who believe these narcissistic rejects are right. To ensure the safety of humanity, we need to wear masks and need to be vaccinated. Incidentally, the new weapon of choice, considering the modern-day sword is the gun, the new sword in the hands of our enemy is the needle that administers the vaccine, and that
Harax.
from the word charagma, that will administer the RFID microchip. Verse 16, "For there shall be sedition amongst men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." 2021 may very well be that year that this sedition, which is the violent uproars, riots, Esau versus Esau, Esau versus Jacob, wars of classism, Salakia, racism, and every other kind of schism takes place. Let's close with this. I forgot to mention, just like the States and almost every other nation, every other country, we too have a national anthem. It starts off by saying, "Oh, Canada, our home and native land." Let that sit with you while I get this scripture. This is Micah 2:2. To paint the picture, we'll begin at 1. "Woe," meaning destruction, a bad time is coming, "to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in their power of their hand." You Illuminati bankers and globalists, really any nation that oppresses and has the people under their subjection, that pertains to you. Verse 2, and they covet fields and take them by violence, which is exactly what you did to our brother Gad in the northern kingdom, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man and his heritage. Sound familiar, you swagger jacker? Our home and native land is not yours, E. It belongs to the real Hebrew Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and North American, Native American Indians. And ultimately, as I can see, and, given the widespread news reports, ultimately your plan is to further oppress us in it. In any event, let's close with this. Back to Daniel chapter 7, continuing on reading verse 26. Hasting the coming of the day of our Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions, meaning you Esau and you other nations, shall serve and obey him. Kal halal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Through the power and spirit, I hope you edified. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who teach this 100% truth and rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Shalom, Yasharallah. Don't take that jab and don't take that chip.